We're gonna pull the 276 open rear end out, and we're gonna throw in the 391 sure grip that used to be in the car before, and see if we can get this car to hook up at the next challenge. Very first step is jack up the car and pull the wheels off. Then pull the drums off. Then pull the axles out. You have this hole on your axle flange. You're basically going to rotate it to get to the nuts back here. There's 5 nuts holding the axle in. All right, there we go. Backing plate with the bar up so we can get the axle out. All right, we're going to take the 10 bolts holding the third member into the housing out. We're going to put a jack underneath this to crack the seal open and then drain it. It seems to me when I run one gasket, I'll get a small drip coming from the third member. So I'm going to run 2 gaskets, coat it with some black silicone on each side. We'll throw those up there in the housing, and then we'll put the third member in. All right, the 391s are back in. We're gonna let the silicone dry, probably overnight. In the meantime, I'm gonna go ahead and throw the axles back in and the drums back on. So this is on the download. This is a top secret piece of information that nobody knows about except you because you're watching this video. I'm gonna install a set of Competition Engineering slider links that I've had laying around for about 20 years onto Dorothy, our 66 Plymouth Belvedere, to try to improve traction so we're not getting beat by 2 or 3 bus lengths at the drag strip. All right, we got the U-bolt bracket out, we got the U-bolts out, got my drop block out. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and pull each leaf spring out. I'll do one side at a time. Jack up the rear end, lift it from the leaf spring, pull the leaf spring out. I've got to press the bushing out on the front perch. Replace it with a solid bushing, one of these aluminum ones. We have the shackle out. Bushings are pretty tore up on the back side. All we got to do is pull the front perch off. All right, I remounted the leaf spring back into the car because it's just too difficult to hold the leaf spring and try to get this nut loose. So we're gonna use the car to hold it for us so we can knock this nut loose. Hopefully this bushing presses out easy and we get the aluminum one back in and we get this all back together with no problems. And then just do a rinse repeat on the other side. So I've been watching everybody's videos, and Night Rancher just came out with his videos. He did a great job. You gotta go check it out. And all the passes that we made at Willow Springs. One thing that dawned on me is that we're actually gonna be racing at several different tracks. Our next venue is gonna be at Paris, which is a really short track. I think it's only 330 or something like that. I think it's only 330, so it's extremely short. Popped out, all right. There's the old bushing. So we'll just keep pressing the new bushing in. If you look at the footage at Willow Springs, Dorothy was actually out of the hole several times, and that's spinning the tires. So if we can improve the traction, we can come out of the hole hard and get around these fast cars and to the finish line before they have a chance to get the momentum going and start to get traction and to power around us. I'm gonna see if I can whack it with a hammer to get it even. All right, we got it even. There's a little, I don't know if you can see that, but there's a little taper there. So at the end of the taper is where the leaf spring eyelet is. And it's about the same on this side. All right, so we pressed this bushing in, we slid this bushing in, and then we're taking these plates. You have to put these U-bolts between these plates like this. And then we bring these plates over these bushings, these eyelets, and we take this bracket and go on there like so. Start screwing the nuts on. Okay, we need another eyelet sleeve that goes here with a nut and bolt. Okay, pretty much holding it all together. Flip this over. All right, put these washers here. All right, this is a problem. So the leaf spring should be able to swing down farther, but this nut and bolt and sleeve hits the bottom of the front leaf spring bracket. I need this thing to be able to swing down farther so that we could get it into the car. Because when we install this thing, you know, the back end of the hanger is going to be hanging down. So this guy needs to be able to pivot to get it in. Now I could put it up on the jack stand to some degree, but it's at such an extreme level. If this were turned perpendicular to the ground, the leaf spring in the back would be going up in through the trunk. So I need to have some pivot to be able to let the leaf spring move and hang down enough to get it installed. I think I'm going to carry this all the way to here. All right, I think I'm going to go with that. It probably needs more, you know, to lean forward just a little bit. I just don't want to keep cutting into this and keep weakening it as I do that. So I think it's still pretty stout and strong like the way it is now. If I need to, I could probably cut a little bit more into here. In fact, I think I'm gonna go ahead and do that. All right, I think that's about perfect. The fact that I can get this to lean forward a little bit is enough. You know, the leaf spring's not gonna fully swing down as it would if it didn't have the slide link on it. So we're gonna have to jack it up and then to get it into the car, but that's okay. All right, got the front hanger in. See, we got plenty of clearance while the leaf spring's on the jack. So once we get the rear end, you know, this bolt's gonna go away from this area, which is why I didn't want to cut too much out of here. The shackle bushings that came out of it were just totally worn out. I think I got a kit from my buddy Chris a while back, and I think they're polyurethane. They're kind of ugly because they're red, but for Dorothy, it's just the kind of thing for Dorothy. Yeah, see, who wants to put this in their Mopar? Nobody's gonna want to do that. But Dorothy will take these gladly because performance-wise, these will work great. By the way, these are energy suspension polyurethane. So I loosened up the bolts to the front spring hanger so that it gave us some flexibility to move the leaf springs around, because with the shackle in place, it was wanting to kind of flex upward. So by loosening this, I could wiggle it around to get that thing through. And we just got to get in here and tighten all these up, and then I'll go back to the front hanger and tighten that up. All right, got brand new polyurethane bushings. I don't think anybody's even going to see that they're red, so. The kit comes with this rear leaf spring pad or bracket. Comes with a stud that you're going to mount through here so that you can mount your shock tube. We got the passenger side leaf spring back in. Some new polyurethane bushings with the Slide-A-Link front bracket and U-bolt bracket. We just got to put the bar in, which is going to go from this eyelet to that eyelet. Install the solid rod end with jam nut into the front sliding tube, smaller diameter tube. Make sure the rod end is threaded into the tube a minimum of 1 inch. Tighten the jam nut securely. Assemble the adjusting screw into the rear tube assembly, larger diameter tube, so that it is threaded in approximately 2 inches. Use anti-seize on threads. Thread the 1 1/8 jam nut onto the adjusting screw and tighten the jam nut. Install the 3/4 jam nut onto the spherical rod end and thread into the end of the adjusting screw. Use anti-seize on threads. Make sure the rod end threads into the adjusting screw, minimum 1 inch. Okay, that's about the halfway mark of this shaft. So now that this nut is bottomed against this, I can screw this in to complete that 2-inch insertion it described. So it's telling me to tighten this one, to leave this one loose for adjustment later. Lube the sliding tube with wheel bearing grease. Slip the urethane shock pad onto the sliding tube. Slip the sliding tube into the rear tube assembly. These bushings go in like so. Goes through its lock nut, which is this guy. So that one's ready to go in. So let's go ahead and assemble the other one, and just so it's ready to rock and roll. That guy's tight. I'm gonna have to get a big wrench for this, which I don't have, to tighten that up. So all I did was take the gap out of the slide link at the moment, so there's no preload in it. About right there is 0 gap. I think I want to mark these bars. Here's my 0 gap. And now we know 0. So when we bring this around one rotation, we know we got 1 rotation of preload. Loosen our lock nut here so that we can turn this. Adding preload would be extending it. So on this side we'd go in this direction. That's 1 revolution of preload. We'd lock it down. Again, you're not going to have this gap here with all the weight of the car on there, and it would require a wrench to turn it. This is going to be the short version of how to install the slide links. So the very first step is jacking up the rear end, pull the weight off the leaf spring. Next, we're going to loosen the shock from the leaf spring bracket. Now we're going to loosen all the U-bolts, take those off. And the bracket's off. U-bolts are out. And we'll take the drop block. Now we're going to take the shackle loose so we can drop the rear part of the leaf spring. Look at that. This side actually wasn't as bad. Well, I spoke too soon. That one's pretty beat up. All right, now we're going to take the leaf spring out from the front leaf spring bracket. So what I learned from the other side was you want to break this loose while it's still in the car, so use the car to hold this for you because it's on there. All right, now that we got that loose, we're going to loosen the leaf spring bracket from the body of the car. Got a generator here with some blocks of wood to support the leaf spring so that it comes in here to the press. Lube it up as much as I can. I put some plates over the aluminum bushing so that I don't damage it. Okay, I think that bushing, the stock bushing broke loose. It's popped down a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and grease this guy up so that it slides into the eyelet easy. The factory bushing just popped out. There it is. Here, I'm going to try to watch this tapered edge and align it to that eyelet edge, so I don't have to waste a bunch of time trying to smack this thing back and forth to get it centered. It's nice to just get it this one time. There we go. So the edge of the taper is to the edge of the eyelet. Oh, that freaking hurt. See that shard of aluminum? We need to add this arch to the other side. So if you recall, I used this washer as my guide to start that arch and then just connect the two. Should work. Okay, see, step, facing up, step, facing down. Always unplug this thing when you're changing blades, because if you accidentally hit that, it could be ugly. Cutting the front leaf spring bracket is the hardest part, and they're not really that hard. It took a lot more time doing the driver's side because it was more or less my first time. Cutting the front leaf spring bracket takes the most time because you gotta make some cuts. You don't want to cut too much and weaken the bracket. So you're making smaller cuts and then test fitting, smaller cuts, test fitting. When we got to the other side of the car, we already knew how much we wanted to cut off based on the passenger side of the car. So we were able to make the cuts we wanted, and I only had to make an additional grind just to shave a little bit more out of the cutaway to get it to have enough room for movement. Probably not going to record this, but just so you can kind of see this thing is like, I don't know if it's like rust, and the rubber impregnated into the rust. So I'm going to take a wire wheel to this to clean this up so that we can slide the bushings on easily. We're going to install the front of the leaf spring, get that all squared away, and then we'll put the shackle back in on the back with new bushings in it. Okay, if you remember, I want to leave this loose. Leaving it loose is going to give us the ability to twist the leaf spring so we can get the rear shackle in easily. I ended up taking the grinder to this first, and then I put it on then I took a wire wheel to it. It's crazy how hard that rubber was. It was like petrified rubber, and it totally just bonded to the metal. Now that the shackle's in, we can tighten up the bolts to the front leaf spring bracket. And now we're going to put the U-bolt to leaf spring plate on. We're going to close the gap right about there and call that 0 preload. I'm going to go ahead, put one rotation of preload in everything. We'll just go ahead and lock it in for one rotation. We'll do the same to the other side. One rotation preload. Okay, shock adjustment. All right, we're all the way down to 1. That's setting 1. You can see there's a line here, so that's our indicator. All the way to the left, counterclockwise, setting 1. Every 8th turn is an adjustment. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, that time it went pretty smoothly, but sometimes when you do this, it gets to 7 and it feels like that's all the way. But if you give it a second, I think you're letting the pressure in the shock settle a little bit, and then you're able to go further. 8, 9. So that's setting 9. That's full stiff. We're going to back it down to 7. So that's 8. That's 7. And go check out my son's channel. It's called Nut Job Garage. I'll put a link here somewhere on the screen. Go check it out. We haven't done anything on his channel recently, but when things cool off a little bit, we get some more time, we'll get back on his 71 Charger. All right, so I'm gonna take Dorothy for a test drive real quick. I think the low gears made it worse. Now both tires are spinning a lot more easily than the one tire was with the taller 276 gears.